No doubt the meteor had poisoned the soil, but the illness of persons and animals who had eaten nothing grown in that soil was another matter. Was it the well water? Very possibly. It might be a good idea to analyse it, but what peculiar madness could have made both boys jump into that well? Their deeds were so similar, and the fragments showed that they had both suffered from the grey brittle death. Why was everything so grey and brittle? It was the coroner, seated near a window overlooking the yard, who first noticed the glow about the well. Night had fully set in, and all the abhorrent grounds seemed fatally luminous, with more than the fitful moonbeams. But this new glow was something definite and distinct, and appeared to shoot up from the black pit like a softened ray from a searchlight, giving dull reflections in the little ground pools where the water had been emptied. It had a very queer colour, and as all the men clustered round the window, Amy gave a violent start. For this strange beam of ghastly miasma was to him of no unfamiliar hue. He had seen that colour before, and feared to think what it might mean. He had seen it in a nasty brittle globule in the aerolite 2 summers ago, had seen it in the crazy vegetation of the springtime, and had thought he had seen it for an instant, that very morning, against the small barred window of that terrible attic room where nameless things had happened. It had flashed there a second, and a clammy and hateful current of vapour had brushed past him, and then poor Nahum had been taken by something of that colour. He had said so at the last, said it was like the globule on the plants. After that had come the runaway in the yard, and the splash in the well. And now that well was belching forth to the night a pale insidious beam of the same demonic tint. It does credit to the alertness of Amy's mind that he puzzled even at that tense moment over a point which was essentially scientific. He could not but wonder at his gleaning of the same impression from a vapour glimpsed in the daylight against a window opening on the morning sky, and from a nocturnal exhalation seen as a phosphorescent mist against a black and blasted landscape. It wasn't right. It was against nature, and he thought of those terrible last words of his stricken friend. It come from some place where things aren't they as they is here. One of them professors said so. All 3 horses outside, tied to a pair of shriveled saplings by the road, were now neighing and pawing frantically. The wagon driver started for the door to do something, but Amy laid a shaky hand on his shoulder. "Don't go out there," he whispered. "There's more to this nor what we know. Nahum said something lived in the well that sucks your life out. He said it must be something that growed from a round ball, like one we all seen in the meteor stone that fell a year ago June. Sucks and burns, he says, and it's just a cloud of colour, like that light out there now, that you can hardly see and can't tell what it is. Nahum thought it feeds on everything living, and gets stronger all the time. He said he seen this last week. It must be something from way off in the sky, like the men from the college last year says the meteor stone was. The way it's made and the way it works ain't like no way o' God's world. It's summat from beyond." So the men paused indecisively as the light from the well grew stronger, and the hitched horses pawed and whinnied in increasing frenzy. It was truly an awful moment. With terror in that ancient and accursed house itself, 4 monstrous sets of fragments, 2 from the house and 2 from the well, in the woodshed behind, and that shaft of unknown and unholy iridescence from the slimy depths in front. Amy had restrained the driver on impulse, forgetting how uninjured he himself was after the clammy brushing of that coloured vapour in the attic room. But perhaps it is just as well that he acted as he did. No one will ever know what was abroad that night, and though the blasphemy from beyond had not so far hurt any human of unweakened mind, there is no telling what it might not have done at that last moment, and with its seemingly increased strength and the special signs of purpose it was soon to display beneath the half-clouded moonlit sky. All at once one of the detectives at the window gave a short, sharp gasp. The others looked at him, and then quickly followed his own gaze upward to the point at which its idle straying had been suddenly arrested. There was no need for words. What had been disputed in country gossip was indisputable no longer, and it is because of the thing which every man of that party agreed in whispering later on that the strange days are never talked of in Arkham. It is necessary to premise that there was no wind at that hour of the evening. One did arise not long afterwards, but there was absolutely none then. Even the dry tips of the lingering hedge mustard, grey and blighted, and the fringe on the roof of the standing Democrat wagon were unstirred. And yet, amid that tense godless calm, the high bare boughs of all the trees in the yard were moving. They were twitching morbidly and spasmodically, clawing in convulsive and epileptic madness at the moonlit clouds, scratching impotently in the noxious air, as if jerked by some alien and bodiless line of linkage with subterranean horrors writhing and struggling below the black roots. Not a man breathed for several seconds. Then a cloud of darker depth passed over the moon, and the silhouette of clutching branches faded out momentarily. At this there was a general cry, muffled with awe, but husky and almost identical from every throat. For the terror had not faded with the silhouette, and in a fearsome instant of deeper darkness, the watchers saw, wriggling at that treetop height, 1,000 tiny points of faint and unhallowed radiance, tipping each bough like the fire of St. Elmo, or the flames that came down on the apostles' heads at Pentecost. It was a monstrous constellation of unnatural light, like a glutted swarm of corpse-fed fireflies dancing hellish sarabands over an accursed marsh, and its colour was that same nameless intrusion which Amy had come to recognise and dread. All the while the shaft of phosphorescence from the well was getting brighter and brighter, bringing to the minds of the huddled men a sense of doom and abnormality which far outraced any image their conscious minds could form. It was no longer shining out, it was pouring out, and as the shapeless stream of unplaceable colour left the well, it seemed to flow directly into the sky. The veterinary shivered, and walked to the front door to drop the heavy extra bar across it. Amy shook no less, and had to tug and point for lack of a controllable voice when he wished to draw notice to the growing luminosity of the trees. The neighing and stamping of the horses had become utterly frightful, but not a soul of that group in the old house would have ventured forth for any earthly reward. With the moments the shining of the trees increased, while their restless branches seemed to strain more and more toward verticality. The wood of the well sweep was shining now, and presently a policeman dumbly pointed to some wooden sheds and beehives near the stone wall on the west. They were commencing to shine too, though the tethered vehicles of the visitors seemed so far unaffected. Then there was a wild commotion and clopping in the road, and as Amy quenched the lamp for better seeing, they realized that the span of frantic greys had broke their sapling and run off with the Democrat wagon. The shock served to loosen several tongues, and embarrassed whispers were exchanged. "It spreads on everything organic that's been around here," muttered the medical examiner. No one replied, but the man who had been in the well gave a hint that his long pole must have stirred up something intangible. "It was awful," he added. "There was no bottom at all, just ooze and bubbles and the feeling of something lurking under there." Amy's horse still pawed and screamed deafeningly in the road outside, and nearly drowned its owner's faint quaver as he mumbled his formless reflections. "It come from that stone. It growed down there. It got everything living. It fed on 'em, mind and body. Tad and Murney, Zenas and Nabby. Name was the last. They all drunk the water. It got strong on 'em. It come from beyond, where things ain't like they be here. Now it's going home." At this point, as the column of unknown colour flared suddenly stronger and began to weave itself into fantastic suggestions of shape, which each spectator later described differently, there came from poor Hero such a sound as no man before or since ever heard from a horse. Every person in that low-pitched sitting-room stopped his ears, and Amy turned away from the window in horror and nausea. Words could not convey it. When Amy looked out again, the helpless beast lay huddled inert on the moonlit ground beneath the splintered shafts of the buggy. That was the last of Hero till they buried him the next day. But the present was no time to mourn, for almost at this instant a detective silently called attention to something terrible in the very room with them. In the absence of the lamplight, it was clear that a faint phosphorescence had begun to pervade the entire apartment. It glowed on the broad planked floor and the fragment of rag carpet, and shimmered over the sashes of the small paned windows. It ran up and down the exposed corner posts, coruscated about the shelf and mantel, and infected the very doors and furniture. Each minute saw it strengthen, and at last it was very plain that healthy living things must leave that house.